Grief is big and complex. It's messy and unpredictable. Understanding more about grief won't necessarily make it easy to cope with your loss, but it can be comforting to know more about what to expect during this season of life. Hi everyone, I'm Tammy Becker. Welcome to Faith Food Episode 9, Jesus, Our Refuge in Grief. Don't forget to go to the description and grab your free devotional in the description to accompany this lesson and use it throughout the week. All right, let's get started with a real life story. Tyler and his wife were looking forward to the birth of their first child. As someone who had grown up without a father in his own life, Tyler was really excited for this opportunity to shower his own daughter with love. But there were complications during the delivery. Tyler's wife and daughter both lived, but his child suffered with irreversible brain damage. She would never be able to speak, walk, or do other daily activities on her own. So instead of celebrating the birth of his daughter, Tyler found himself in a sea of grief. All of his energy went to comforting his wife and researching everything he could about caring for a disabled baby. When he couldn't sleep one night because he was worrying about the future, he turned on a radio and he heard a gospel song playing, and the lyrics talked about how God is our refuge. The words comforted Tyler and reminded him of Psalm 46, verses 1 to 2. God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. Tyler certainly felt as if the earth beneath him was giving way. The future that had seemed so bright and so hopeful only weeks before now looked as if it would be filled only with hardship and misery. Grief comes in many forms. Grief is an emotional journey someone experiences pretty much after loss. It's often messy. It comes with highs and lows. You may feel like you've accepted your loss one day, only to wake up and then, the next morning you're like overcome with anger or, over what happened. It's important to understand that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. While most people can associate grief with the loss of a loved one who has died, that is not the only cause. Grief comes in many forms and it affects every person differently. Grief with divorce. Going through a divorce may cause you to grieve. For your once happy marriage, you might think of the early years of your relationship and wish you could relive them. You might experience bouts of anger towards your spouse. You may be in denial, thinking you should still have time to reason with your soon-to-be former spouse. Besides grieving for your marriage, some people also grieve for the changes in their family life. You may see your kids less often than more than usual, or you might be dealing with the messy emotions caused by the divorce. Then there's grief and illness. If you were diagnosed with a serious illness, you'll grieve for the loss of your health. You may feel angry at the world or desperate to bargain with God. Some people experience a serious illness, they go into denial, and they don't want to follow a treatment plan. Grieving for your once healthy body is natural and your pain is understandable. If you're watching a loved one facing a serious illness, you may grieve for them. Maybe your young son loves playing sports and dreams about making it to the National Football League. Then you learn from his doctor that he has a muscle disease and will leave him in a wheelchair bound in a few years. Even though you haven't been diagnosed with the illness, you grieve for him. You grieve for his dreams, for his health, or what this will mean for the future. Then there's grief with trauma. Grief can also affect you when you've been through a trauma, like having your home robbed or surviving through a sexual assault. It's normal to deal with a grief after a traumatic experience. You might grieve because you've lost your sense of safety, or you no longer feel the world is a good place. You may blame yourself or question what you did to deserve the trauma. You may even feel anger towards God for not preventing this. You are not alone in your grief. Regardless of your loss, it is important that you give yourself permission to grieve. Some people mistakenly believe that it's wrong for Christians to grieve. They think that a Christian should endure every trial stoically. But look at Isaiah's description of Jesus. He was despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, acquainted with the deepest grief. You can find that in Isaiah 53:3. Jesus himself was known to experience deepest grief. He wasn't a man of happy times and easy burdens. He didn't smile at the cross or rejoice in that coming suffering. No, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus wept. Like so many of us in the middle of our grief, he cried out and he begged for his suffering to be removed. It's natural to experience grief following a loss, but unlike the world, those who know Christ have the hope and comfort that they're not alone in the middle of their trial. Understanding the journey of grief is a big and complex, it's big and complex, it's messy and it's unpredictable. Understanding more about grief won't necessarily make it easy to cope with your loss, but it can be comforting to know more about what to expect during this season of life. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was an expert that first documented the different stages of grief. And according to her work, there are 5 stages or emotions of grief that people experience. If you're in the middle of grieving a loss, then you may recognize some of these stages already. Stage 1, denial. When something horrible happens, it's natural to want to deny it. You don't want to believe that you could wake up one day and a loved one could be gone. You don't think that a serious illness could be the cause of your parents' troubling symptoms. You might say things like, I can't believe this is happening. This isn't true. My loved one can't be gone. I was just talking to her yesterday. My spouse can't be filing for divorce. We were just happy over the holidays. Stage number 2, anger. As denial begins to fade and you're left with your new reality, you may experience intense anger. You might be angry at your loved one for leaving you if they died. You might be angry at the doctor that diagnosed your loved one. You might be angry at yourself and wonder what you could have done differently. You may even say things like, how could mom leave me? She knows I need her. Why did it take the doctor so long to diagnose her? I should have known her symptoms were serious. When the word of the Lord came to Hezekiah and he knew he was to die, this was his response. Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion and have done what is good in your eyes. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. 2 Kings 20, verse 2. His bitter tears were no doubt from anger and frustration. Like us, Hezekiah was powerless to the changes of his situation. Stage 3, bargaining. When faced with the loss, it's common to try to bargain. You want your loved one to see a different doctor for a second, third, or fourth opinion. You may make promises to God that you'll be a better person if your loved one is spared or sent back to you. In the event of a breakup or divorce, you may try to convince your significant other to give it one more try or to ask that you remain friends. You might pledge to change your ways or suggest counseling in order to stay together. Stage 4, depression. During and after loss, you may experience bouts of depression. You might replay all of the unkind things you said to your loved one. You may think of all the times you could have been nicer to your friend or family member. You might go to call your loved one on the phone or text message them only to realize you can't. You might feel relief, especially if a loved one was suffering before they died or if your marriage was on the rocks for years before your divorce. For some people of faith, this particular stage is especially challenging, as you may have been taught that Christians don't experience depression. But Jesus certainly did in the Garden of Gethsemane. He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." Matthew 26, verses 37 and 38. Emphasis added. When it comes to depression, don't try to shove it down. Repressing those emotions can prolong your grief and make it harder for you to rebuild your life. Instead, follow the example of Jesus. Get together with close friends and share your pain. Ask them to pray with and for you. Stage 5, acceptance. Reaching acceptance isn't an easy feat. It's something you can force. Rather, it's a process of acknowledging what was and coming to terms with your new reality. This can be the most difficult part of grieving. Acceptance doesn't mean you'll never cry over your loved one's death or your trauma again. There's going to still be hard days. You're still going to experience those difficult emotions. But wrapped in with these emotions will be good things too. You'll be able to look back on the memories from your life before with fondness. You'll begin to enjoy little pleasures in life again. You'll start making plans and creating goals. Your journey is unique. When talking about the 5 stages, remember that everyone experiences grief differently. You may not go through every stage, or you may go through the stages in a different order. This is perfectly normal. Give yourself permission to feel the emotions. Accept grace when you need it. Practice the self-care when you're grieving. During times of grief, care for yourself. During your times of grief, caring for yourself may not be high on your priority list. You may already feel like overwhelmed by all all the things that you need to do. And adding one more task may not seem even possible. But if anything, you need extra care when you're grieving. It's not selfish and it's not wrong to take time out for self-care. It's important that you nurture your mind, your body, and your spirit. And here are a few simple ways that you can do that, okay? Eat a nutritious meal. Sometimes people are grieving, they have difficulty finding joy in anything. You may not like your favorite meals and snacks right now. They may taste weird to you, or you may find that you just don't enjoy them. This is so common, so don't be alarmed if it happens to you. As you work through your grief, your normal appetite will eventually, it'll return, okay? All right, here's another one. Do a creative activity. Being creative can help you release strong emotions. You might try adult coloring. I do this all the time. I love it. Do some knitting, do some jewelry making, tinker in your shed. Don't be discouraged if you try one activity and you find you don't enjoy it. Do something else. You may have to try several activities before you discover that one's best for you. Okay? There's another one. Pamper yourself. Sit back and let someone else care for you. Take a spa day. Get a massage or a pedicure. Hire a cleaning service to scrub your home from top to bottom. Get a shampoo and a haircut at your local beauty salon or your barber shop. Go out to your favorite restaurant and go out for dinner. Take care of yourself. It's okay. Do something nice for yourself. Get a hold of your friends. Do it together. So talk it out. Grief can cause you to question your entire belief system. Maybe you felt you received a sign from God that your loved one was going to be healed, but now they're gone. And maybe you thought your marriage was supposed to be for life, but now you're in the middle of a divorce. Maybe you thought if you did the right thing, you'd never be a victim of a violent crime. Don't struggle with your doubts and fears alone. Reach out to a trusted friend or a pastor to share your feelings. The other person may not have any answers that comfort you, but having a space to voice your doubts is important for your healing. Another thing, listen to your body. When you're grieving, your normal routine is disrupted, okay? You may not be sleeping as much, or you may be sleeping more than usual. You may be eating more or less than you typically do. You might be working more, or you might find yourself working fewer hours. It's essential that you honor your body during this time. If you need a nap in the middle of the day, don't feel guilty about it. If you need to turn off your smartphone and watch movies all day, then do it. Taking time to take care of yourself might feel selfish to you, but upon learning that John the Baptist, his beloved cousin, had died, Jesus just wanted to be alone. When Jesus heard what happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Matthew 14, verse 13. In the middle of grief, don't forget to take time away when you need it. Be kind to yourself and look after your mind and your body as if you were caring for a hurting friend. All right. How to offer compassion and practical help to a grieving friend. So your friend is grieving and you want to help. Maybe your friend has lost a loved one and has been diagnosed with a serious illness or is going through a divorce, but you don't know how to help and you're worried. You'll make their pain worse, okay? That is a common concern for many Christians. So here are a few ideas for you on the way that you can help. Start by listening. Your grieving friend may share the same stories and memories with you again and again. They may talk about their loss repeatedly. This is part of the grieving process. You can help by listening to your friend. When your friend is done speaking, acknowledge and validate their pain. If your friend is mourning the loss of a loved one, you could say, "I'm sad Dean died too. He was a kind man." If your friend was the victim of a violent crime, you might say, "You did everything right. Surviving is hard and I'm glad you're here." All right. Next, you could offer them practical help. It's tempting to say to a grieving friend, "Call me if you need anything." But when someone is grieving, they're usually overwhelmed and may not know that what they need right now. That's why it can be so helpful to offer specific help. Always phrase your help as a question. You want your friend to be able to decline your offer if she doesn't need help, need the help, or if she just wants to be alone. You could say something like, "I know you aren't sleeping well these days. Would it be okay if I picked up the kids and took them to school every morning this week?" Or maybe you might say something like, "You got a lot on your plate right now. Is it okay if I clean the house and do the laundry?" Here's another thing. Be consistent. It can take up to 2 years for a grieving friend to recover. In the meantime, look for recurring tasks that you can, with their permission, take over. Good examples include like making sure the oil in her car gets changed regularly, or taking care of her lawn when the season changes, or by showing up repeatedly. Your friend will know that you love and care for her. Reach out on the anniversaries and the special events. For grieving people, anniversaries and special events and birthdays can be difficult. So reach out to your friends on these special dates. You might say something like, "I know it's Dean's birthday today. How are you feeling?" Or to a friend with a serious illness, you might say, "I know you were diagnosed this time last year. How are you doing?" And then the holidays also make grief, resurface things. So a friend that lost a loved one maybe 15 years ago may still grieve. It might come up as deeply as if they lost their loved one 15 minutes ago. Let your friends know that you're thinking of her during the holidays and offer to do any activity together. For example, you might say, "I don't know," or you might say, "I know you, and I know that Dean loved Christmas. Would you like some help decorating your tree this year?" Or, "I'm baking some Christmas cookies tomorrow, and I'd love if you could drop by so we could do it together." Don't pressure your friend to accept your offers. She may want to grieve privately, and if that's her decision, respect it and let her know that you still love her, you're still there, and you're still going to support her. Because grief affects everyone differently, and the best gift that you can give your friend during this time is just to offer that compassion and a listening ear. All right, life after loss, healing your heart. Grief is our response to loss, and your loss may have been caused by the death of a loved one, a divorce, a major breakup, a violent crime, or the diagnosis of a serious illness. It's a natural journey that helps us understand our loss and accept our new reality. Healing from grief can be hard. It's not a clear-cut process with definite beginning and end dates. It's like trying to navigate a mountain road without GPS. However, there are things you can do to begin the healing process through this difficult time. Feeling your emotions. At first, the news of a loss can cause you to feel shock or denial. Some people become numb for the first few days and are disconnected with what's happening around them. But eventually, you'll begin feeling again. You may be sad that you're lost, that you lost a loved one, or you feel some relief that you survived a violent crime. You may want to go back in time and bargain with the doctor who gave you the diagnosis. These intense emotions are normal and shouldn't be suppressed. It's healthy to acknowledge your emotions and express them. Scream, shout, or cry when you feel you need to. If you want to get physical, get a punching bag or go to the gym with someone. Take your frustration and anger out on the bag. When Lazarus died, Jesus wept for his friend and his friend's family. He grieved and he didn't try to hide his pain or pretend it wasn't there. Even knowing how the story ended, the human part of Jesus still ached. All right, seek support. You don't have to grieve alone. When you're feeling sad, reach out to a trusted friend. Go out for coffee, see a movie together, or go to the beach, or simply sit in silence with your friend. Connecting with supportive people is important in your healing. When you feel connected, you're less likely to become isolated in your pain. If you'd like to meet with others who are also grieving, ask a counselor or a spiritual leader about support groups in your area. Create routines. Create new routines. Routines can give you a feeling of control and safety. But when you've recently lost a loved one or are going through a divorce, your normal routines may not be possible anymore. And that's where creating new routines can be helpful. Maybe you've decided that every Thursday night will be family night, or that on Tuesdays you'll go to brunch with a friend. These routines can give you something to look forward to, as well as a sense of life that's returning to normal. It's important to understand that there's no quick fix or escape from grief. The only way to get to the other side is to go through the darkness. But you don't have to do that alone. Reach out to the caring, concerned members of your community and let them comfort you through this difficult time. You can come to God. One of the most difficult aspects of grief is that it can profoundly alter our relationship with God. Before your crisis or your trauma, you may have said that you trust God completely. But now things look differently. You may wonder if He's trustworthy. You may doubt His goodness. You may even feel utterly abandoned by God. You don't have to hide these emotions, and even if you tried, God would still know. He knows everything you feel. He understands every part of your story. You don't have to hide from Him. In fact, David penned these words about sharing our deepest grief and our biggest heartaches with God. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge. Psalm 62, verse 8. No matter how you feel or what you say, you can take comfort in this. It doesn't come as a surprise to God, but it doesn't leave you alone in your grief like any good parent. He grieves with and for you. He is holding on to you and gently bandaging your wounds even now. Folks, that's it for this episode of Faith Food. I hope that you found value in learning about grief in the different stages. And just remember to go to the description and print out your devotional so that you can work through your devotion in this lesson throughout the week. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit my bell. Invite your friends and tell them to start from the beginning. And come on back and see me next Tuesday when the next episode drops. And don't forget to check us out on the web at www.youministries.com. I also have a podcast, and I host it on Anchor. It's called Almighty God and Gospel Girl Podcast, but you can check it out. It's on any of your favorite platforms. And also come study the Bible with us in our private Facebook group called Girl Read Your Bible. This is Tammy Becker. I'll see you next time.